Hello dear YouTube viewers, I hope you're doing well. Okays, let's start our video. I had always been the kind of person who worked hard, even if the rewards never seemed to match the effort. Life had been rough lately. My job hours were unstable, sometimes cut without warning, and the bills never stopped piling up. Every month felt like a race. I was always losing. The rent notice sat like a shadow on my table. The fridge held more empty shelves than food, and nights stretched long with worry, making sleep nearly impossible. Still, I pushed forward, telling myself things would somehow get better. In our neighborhood, there was one person everyone seemed to turn to in difficult times, Mr. Rahim. He was financially comfortable, not the type to flaunt wealth, but always keeping himself in the center of things. People respected him, though some whispered that his help came with strings attached. I had seen it before, a loan to a neighbor, followed by advice that sounded more like control. He wasn't cruel, just the sort of man who liked to remind people where their blessings came from. One evening, as I returned home weighed down with worry, Mr. Rahim crossed my path. He noticed my face, tired and distracted, and asked what was wrong. For a moment I wanted to hide my struggles, but the words slipped out. I was behind on rent and had no idea how to manage. Without hesitation, he offered me money. My first instinct was to refuse, pride fighting against need, but desperation won. I accepted, murmuring thanks, and he smiled, saying simply, "Pay me back when you can." At that moment, I felt both relief and a quiet unease I couldn't quite explain. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The money Mr. Rahim gave me went straight to the rent, then to the little shop where I bought rice, flour, and vegetables. I even managed to pick up the medicines my mother needed, something I had been putting off far too long. Carrying those bags home, I felt lighter, as if the weight of shame and fear had lifted just a little. That night, eating a warm meal, I made a silent promise to myself. I would return his money as soon as possible. It wasn't just about clearing a debt. It was about keeping my dignity intact. But soon, I began to notice changes in the way Mr. Rahim behaved toward me. Before, he would greet me with the same casual politeness he gave to everyone. Now, he lingered longer, asking questions about how I was spending my time. "Don't forget who helped you," he would say with a half-smile, or, "I hope you're not wasting money on things you don't need." At first, I brushed it off, but then he began dropping by unannounced. His eyes always seemed to scan the room, resting on small things, a loaf of bread on the table, a packet of tea, even the slippers by the door. Each time, he left me with the uneasy feeling that my life was no longer private. It didn't stop there. Soon, whispers began circulating in the neighborhood. I would catch fragments when walking past groups of neighbors. "He owes Rahim's money," or "he should be more responsible." The shame hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't cheated anyone. Yet I walked the streets with my head lowered, as though I carried some hidden guilt for all to see. Then, just as things began to turn around, trouble deepened. I picked up extra work and finally earned enough to start thinking about repayment. But that same week, my younger sister fell ill. The doctor's fee and medicine swallowed the money instantly, and there was no hesitation in my mind. I chose her over the debt. That night, I told myself that Mr. Rahim would understand, that he would see family needs came first. I was wrong. The next day, he appeared at my door. His eyes darted to the pharmacy bag in the corner, and his voice cut like a blade. "So you can spend, but not pay me back." His words carried not just disappointment but accusation, as if my decision to save my sister's health was a personal betrayal to him. At that moment, the relief his loan once gave me began to feel more like a noose tightening around my neck. It happened one afternoon in the heart of the neighborhood, near the little grocery shop where everyone stopped to buy their daily bread and vegetables. I had just stepped out with a small bag of supplies when I heard Mr. Rahim's voice cut through the chatter of the street. "There he is," he said loudly, striding toward me. Before I could react, he was standing in front of me, his voice rising so everyone nearby could hear. "When will you repay me?" he demanded, his tone sharper than ever. "How long do you think you can hide behind excuses? People should know when a man borrows and doesn't return. He isn't trustworthy." Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Heat rushed to my face, and suddenly the bag in my hand felt heavy, my body stiff with shame. I wanted to disappear into the ground. In that moment, I felt small, powerless, like a child being scolded in front of strangers. But then something shifted inside me. The silence I had carried for weeks pressed against my chest, begging to be released. I raised my head and met his eyes. "Money can be returned," I said clearly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "But dignity, once lost, cannot be repaired." The crowd fell quiet. I felt dozens of eyes on me, some wide with shock, others with curiosity. Mr. Rahim blinked, taken aback, as though he hadn't expected me to speak at all. I went on, the words pouring out now, unstoppable. "I never begged you for your help. You offered it. If your kindness came with chains, then it was never kindness to begin with. You gave me money, yes, but you're trying to own my life with it. I refuse to be owned." Murmurs spread through the onlookers. A few nodded in agreement. Mr. Rahim opened his mouth to reply, but no words came. He hadn't planned for resistance. He had planned for my silence, for my shame to crush me into submission. I drew a breath and continued, my voice growing stronger. "Yes, I am poor. Yes, I struggle. But that does not make me less of a person. I may be broke, but I am not broken." My chest felt lighter with every word. "You will have your money, Mr. Rahim. That much I promise. But it will be on my terms, not under the weight of your humiliation." For a moment, the street was frozen. Then slowly, the balance shifted. A few people looked at me with quiet respect. Others turned their eyes from Mr. Rahim, no longer amused by his public show. He stood stiffly, his face flushed, caught between anger and the shock of losing control. I clutched the bag tighter in my hand and walked away, my back straight, each step carrying me further from the weight of his shadow. For the first time since taking his loan, I felt like I had reclaimed something far more valuable than money, my voice. In the days that followed, I noticed a change in the air around me. The same neighbors who once whispered about my debt now looked at me differently. Some offered quiet nods of respect when we crossed paths. Others stopped by to say softly, "You were brave to stand up." Of course, there were still a few who sided with Mr. Rahim, but even they seemed less certain now. People had begun to see what I had seen all along, that his help often carried invisible strings meant to bind, not uplift. Mr. Rahim himself grew quieter. He no longer confronted me in public or lingered outside my door. Perhaps my words had unsettled him, or perhaps he simply realized that his power over me had slipped away. I carried on with my work, determined to gather the money not out of fear, but out of principle. A few weeks later, I placed the full amount into an envelope and walked to his house. He opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. I held the envelope out to him. "This is repayment," I said calmly. "But respect, that I will never owe you again." He took the money without a word, and for once, it was he who lowered his eyes. As I turned and walked away, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I was free, not just from the debt, but from the silence that had bound me. Sometimes, opening your mouth isn't about words at all. It's about reclaiming your dignity. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe. Our channel, Awesome Visual Story.